Straw into Gold: The Metamorphosis of the Everyday by Sandra Cisneros. She was born in 1954. Sandra is one of the most distinctive voices in American literature. She was born in Chicago to Mexican parents, um, and she spent her childhood living uncomfortably between two worlds. The family frequently traveled to Mexico for extended periods of time. Each time they returned to the United States, the family would settle in a new location and at a new school in Chicago's barrios. The frequent moves made it difficult for the Cisneros to make friends. Being the only girl in a family of brothers did not help either, as she often was left out and overlooked. Here's a quote. It says, "You can't erase what you know. You can't forget who you are." When I was living in an artist's colony in the south of France, some fellow Latin Americans who taught at the university in Aix-en-Provence invited me to share a home cooked meal with them. I had been living abroad almost a year when on an NEA grant, subsisting mainly on French bread and lentils so that my money would last longer. So when the invitation to dinner arrived, I accepted without hesitation, especially since they had promised Mexican food. What I didn't realize when they made this invitation was that I was supposed to be involved in preparing the meal. I guess they assumed I knew how to cook Mexican food because I am Mexican. They wanted specifically tortillas, though I'd never made a tortilla in my life. It's true, I had witnessed my mother rolling little armies of dough into perfect circles, but my mother's family is from Guantanamo, uh, Guanajuato, and they are provincianos. Country folk, they only know how to make flour tortillas. My father's family, on the other hand, is Chilango from Mexico City. We ate corn tortillas, but he didn't make them. Someone was sent to the corner tortilla to buy some. I'd never seen anybody make corn tortillas ever. Okay, so what inferences can we make about these people? How they are already making assumptions about our narrator here, about her being Mexican. They automatically assume that she would know how to do certain things, and you should be drawing these inferences out of the fact that they assume that she would be cooking, and they didn't even ask her to cook. Somehow my Latino host had gotten a hold of a packet of corn flour, and this is what they tossed my way with orders to produce tortillas. Así como así. Anyway, they said and went back to their cooking. Why did I feel like a woman in the fairy tale who was locked in a room in order to spin straw into gold? I had the same sick feeling when I was required to write my critical essay for the MFA exam, the only piece of non-creative writing necessary in order to get my graduate degree. How was I to start? There were rules involved there, unlike writing a poem or story, which I did intuitively. There was a step-by-step process needed, and I had to better know it. I felt as if making tortillas or writing a critical paper, for that matter, were tasks so impossible I wanted to break down into tears. So here's a comparison here, an analogy, if you will, of the way that she felt with them ordering her to make corn tortillas, the same as the fairy tale where the woman is locked in a room in order to spin straw into gold. Or feeling the same hopeless way that she did when she had to write a um, a critical essay in order to graduate. Somehow, though, I managed to make tortillas, crooked and burnt, but edible nonetheless. My hosts were absolutely ignorant when it came to Mexican food. They thought my tortillas were delicious. I'm glad my mama wasn't there. Thinking back and looking at an old photograph documenting the three of us consuming those lopsided circles, I am amazed, just as I am amazed I could finish my MFA exam. I managed to do a lot of things in my life I didn't think I was capable of, I'm sorry, and which many others didn't think I was capable of either. Especially because I'm a woman, a Latina, an only daughter in a family of 6 men. My father would have liked to have seen me married long ago. In our culture, men and women don't leave their father's house except by way of marriage. I crossed my father's threshold with nothing carrying me but my own 2 feet, a woman whom no one came for and no one chased away. So let's talk about what was expected of her and what she means by no one came for and no one chased away. She states that in her culture, in order for a woman to leave her parents' house or her father's house was to be courted and wed by another man, but no one came for her. No other man tried to wed her, and her father didn't chase her away either. She just left on her own because she wanted to be independent. To make matters worse, I left before any of my 6 brothers had ventured away from home. I broke a terrible taboo. A taboo is something that we don't usually speak of. Like, it seems too far fetched to even speak of. Somehow, looking back at photos of myself as a child, I wonder if I was aware of being already my own in my own quiet war. I like to think that somehow my family, my Mexicanos, my poverty, all had something to do with shaping me into a writer. I like to think that my parents were preparing me all along for my life as an artist, even though they didn't know it. From my father, I had inherited a love of wandering. He was born in Mexico City, but as a young man, he traveled to the U.S. vagabonding. He eventually was drafted and thus became a citizen, drafted into the army or the military. Some of these stories he had told us about his first months in the U.S. with little or no English surface in my stories in the House of Mango Street, as well as others I have in mind to write in the future. From him I inherited a sappy heart. He still cries when he watches Mexican soap operas, especially if they deal with children who have forsaken their parents. My mother was born, like me, in Chicago, but of a Mexican descent. I would be her tough, streetwise voice that would haunt all my stories and poems. An amazing woman who loves to draw and read books and can sing an opera. A smart cookie. When I was a little girl, we traveled to Mexico City so much I thought my grandparents' house in La Fortuna, number 12, was home. It was the only constant in our nomadic ramblings from one Chicago flat to another. The house in Destiny Street, number 12, in the Colonia Tepic would be perhaps the only home I knew, and that nostalgia for a home would be a theme that would obsess me. My brothers all figured greatly in my art, especially the older 2. I grew up in their shadows. Henry, the second eldest, and my favorite, appears often in poems I have written and in stories which, at times, only borrow his nickname, Kiki. He played a major role in my childhood. We were bunk bed mates. We were co-conspirators. We were pals until my oldest brother came back from studying in Mexico and left me the odd woman out for always. What would my teachers say if they knew I was a writer now? Who would have guessed it? I wasn't a very bright student. I didn't much like school because we moved so much and I was always new and funny looking. In my fifth grade report card, I have nothing but an avalanche of C's and D's. But I don't remember being that stupid. I was good at art and I read plenty of library books, and Kiki laughed at all my jokes. At home, I was fine, but at school, I never opened my mouth except when the teacher called on me. When I think of how I see myself, it would have it would have to be at age 11. I know I'm 32 on the outside, but inside I'm 11. I'm the girl in the picture with skinny arms and a crumpled skirt and crooked hair. I didn't like school because all they saw was the outside of me. School was lots of rules and sitting with your hands folded and being very afraid all the time. I liked looking out the window and thinking. I liked staring at the girl across the way writing her name over and over again in red ink. I wonder why the boy with the dirty collar in front of me didn't have a mama who took better care of him. I think Mama and Papa did the best they could to keep us warm and clean and never hungry. We had birthday and graduation parties and things like that, but there was another hunger that had to be fed. There was a hunger I didn't even have a name for. Was this when I began writing? In 1966, we moved into a house, a real one, our first real home. This meant we didn't have to change schools and be new kids on the block every couple of years. We could make friends and not be afraid we'd have to say goodbye to them and start all over. My brothers and the flock of boys they brought home would become important characters eventually for my stories. Louis and his cousins, me, Mortez and his dog, and with two names, one in English and one in Spanish. My mother flourished in her own home. She took books out of the library and taught herself to garden, to grow flowers. So envied we had to put a lock on the gate to keep out the midnight flower thieves. My mother has never quit gardening. This was the period in my life that's slippery page when you are both child and woman and neither. I was to record in the house in Mango Street. I was still shy. I was a girl who couldn't come out of her shell. How was I to know I would not be recording and documenting the woman who sat there, sadness on the elbow, and stared out the window? It would be the city streets of Chicago I would later record as seen through a child's eyes. I've done all kinds of things I didn't think I could do since then. I've gone to prestigious university, studied with famous writers, and taken an MFA degree. I've taught poetry in schools in Illinois and Texas. I've gotten an NEA grant and run away with it as far as my courage would take me. I've seen the bleached and bitter mountains of the Peloponnesus. I've lived on an island. I've been to Venice twice. I've lived in Yugoslavia. I've been to the famous Nice flower market behind the Opera House. I've lived in a village in the Prealps and witnessed the daily parade of promenaders. I've moved since Europe to the strange and wondrous country of Texas, land of pollard blue skies and big bugs. I met a mayor with my last name and met a famous Chicana and Chicano artists and writers and politicians. Texas is another chapter in my life. It brought with it the Dopey Pisano Fellowship, a 6-month residency on the 265-acre ranch. But most important, Texas brought Mexico back to me. In the days when I would sit at my favorite people watching spot, the snaky Woolsworth counter across the street from the Alamo, the Woolsworth wrench was been born to make a way for progress. I couldn't think of anything else I'd rather be than a writer. I could have traveled to and lectured from Cape Cod to San Francisco to Spain, Yugoslavia,